Well, here we are on a fine Friday morning. There's lots of people busy counting little bits of paper in various centres throughout the occupied land, part of our land, that is. But in Donegal, there's not a ballot to be seen. Would that be right, Pat? No ballots
Yes,
in Donegal.
yeah, that's right. No ballot counting in Donegal. No, the unoccupied part of our territory.
A
Now,
ballot-free, if
what is
not
it?
a
There's
bullet-free centre.
452 people waiting to up seats this morning.
What's that?
There are 452
Oh,
people.
yeah.
Well, there's a lot more candidates, but there's 42. What is it? 452 seats to be filled.
Well, we'll come back to that, Pat. Let's go to the thing that is a wee bit disturbing, and you noticed it, and I noticed it too. This attitude towards and attacks upon refugees. That woman, what's her name? Katie, whatever her name is, that has that show. She had an item
Katie
on
Hannon.
it. Katie Hannon, I thought it was very good actually. She's really getting in underneath the detail of the thing. So, what's your own thoughts, Pat? Why are these attacks occurring? That's the first question, I think.
Yeah, Jude, someone, I would love to say that it's all to do with, like I heard the guys on, and I'll answer it another way. I heard on a lot of people on about these guys that are coming to declare that there's things about facilities and amenities and about services available locally. And there is no doubt about that. There are many genuine people concerned. You can't get a doctor's appointment. There's no swimming pool. There's no bus service. No, not. So what are 68 men and single males coming to a wee village going to do all day? I can understand a certain, whether they were Irish, whether they were Ukrainians, whether they were Syrians, and I've heard people saying, look, it's got nothing whatever to do with race, even though it's been portrayed that way. But then, if you read social media, if you look at social media, there's a whole campaign, a whispering campaign. These guys are rapists, and Jude, you can look it up yourself. And I saw one there quite recently. Some guy in Sweden, three young black fellas slapping him across the face. This is what migrants do. So, Jude, you sort of go, wait a minute. There are a lot of whispering going on in the background. There are people with malevolent intent involved here. So I don't know how you separate what's what. They're the genuine people who have concerns, and then there are those on the far right, as I would say it, who anti-immigrants and so on. So, Jude, I have yet to distill what's going on here. But I would hold, and I'm still of the belief that the vast majority of Irish people are being very, very decent and fair and are not getting involved in this. But Jude, as a concern, you can't turn our back on it anymore and say we're the Ireland of the welcomes. There's a growing number of people, like what happened in Dublin last week, where they burned tents of people outside that immigration office. Jude, that was an absolute disgrace.
It was indeed, and a very bad advertisement for Ireland. I think there's a number of things involved. One is you need to answer certain questions. One is what percentage of those who did the attacking, right, or the blockading, were doing so because they had genuine fears about their health service and so on, and education service. Answer that first, Pat. What percentage would you say has that?
I'd say it's a small number.
I would say the same
but
thing.
Here's what's worrying me. It's a growing number. That's what's.
Do you think is that?
I also think there are players out there who are stirring this big time, and it's growing.
Are you seeing that there are people who start out with genuine concerns for accommodating people, whether for housing or education or health system, which is stretched already?
Yeah.
Or are you saying that there are these people who start out that way, but then get sucked into a hatred of these people who are coming?
I'm not sure that's true. No, Jude, I think what's happening, like a lot of local people, right, Jude, let me give you two examples here. I live in Donegal, right? Last Friday night, there's a guy called Peter Casey who I sort of happened to know on a sort of way. He's a business he was one of the Dragons Den, one of the Irish Dragons Den.
Yeah.
He owns a premises on the way into Buncrana, and he spent quite a lot of money on it. It was an old people's home at one stage, and he was converting it. And he says it's not for profit. It was to house Ukrainians. He says Ukraine was under attack by Russia, he says people here don't realize that 45% of the world's wheat and grain comes from Ukraine, and the implications for all of us are serious. He's got a big thing about Ukraine, and he said he was developing this as a not for profit. Last Friday night, I think it was Friday night, there was an arson attack, and the thing was basically destroyed. Apparently, there's at least £100,000 damage done on it. Right on Monday night, there's a centre. Can't remember the name of it. Sailors Wrestling. It's a place in Buncrana. And the guy who owned it, Christopher Flanagan, he was on Highland Radio last Monday, and he said, or Tuesday, sorry, he said on Monday night, there's a attack and it's been filmed. A guy, they thought at first it was a petrol bomb, but it turned out to be some sort of firecracker. But he said there was an open window on the second floor, and he said the trajectory of something. The person was trying to throw a firecracker in that window. He says in a room where there was women and children, there's a newborn baby, and so etc. etc. Now there are some people who are saying this whole thing of immigrants and asylum seekers are being exploited by business people. They're getting paid a fortune, and they're throwing them in warehouses, and they're throwing them all here. So there's all sorts of narratives coming up about people exploiting it. That it's all, Jude, it's very complex. But the thing about it is, when you add in what's happening in Clare, when you add in what's happened in Dublin, there's a narrative, or not a narrative. There's a sort of a linear sort of thing that, wait a minute, there's a growing number of these sort of protests. And it's hard to believe that they're all about facilities and amenities and infrastructure, that there's not a tone or an undertone of racism somewhere in here.
Yeah. You see, when I see that blockade that they put up in Clare, what they say, well, first of all, you say, well, what prejudice, what racism is this? We don't want these people here. And then they say, but we haven't been consulted by the government, who are just suddenly, these people are turning up. I have to say I have some sympathy with that. If that happened, I'd be really cheesed off. In fact, I'd be cheesed off if any big major decision was made about where I live by the government without consulting me, first of all, consulting the people in the locality. So I suppose that's a fairly valid reason to object. The only trouble is I have a horrible feeling that masks something deeper. I think
you're just saying what I'm thinking.
You mentioned yourself, Pat, that there were 300 males, and this idea that these people are coming and they're going to A, physically attack us, and B, maybe rape our women. That's, I just find that pretty damn repulsive, Why should you assume
Clare, Clare, I think it's 68 males coming to this wee village. And now, Jude, I don't know, that there was a woman on, I think she was on Clare Byrne. She says, I wouldn't care if it's 68 Irish people coming here. She says 68 men with nothing to do all day in a village with no amenities, no infrastructure, no swimming pool, no buses, and all the rest of it. Now, Jude,
what's she saying? What's she suggesting, Pat? Come on, Pat. What is she suggesting when she says?
Well, she's suggesting that eventually they'll be at something nefarious.
Why assume that? You see, I understand that.
Well, that's
a lot of people feel that way, but I find that insulting to, I suppose, to the male sex, to say if there's a bunch of males, they're going to be up to no good. Why?
Yeah. The point is, there's been various places where Ukrainians and others have been housed now for quite a long time, and absolutely no additional crime, no problems, no. But one guy steps out of line, and suddenly, here, look at these, and this is, it's been, I suppose, through human history. One bad apple gets the whole barrel of bad name, that sort of thing. And we've seen, there's been so many things in recent times where white Irish have done things that's sort of glossed over. But in each, along comes an asylum seeker or an immigrant and does something wrong, and suddenly it's all over social media. Look at this is what we're going to get if we bring these people in.
Yeah.
Jude, the bottom line all here is, and I don't know, Jude, it'll take some time. You'll need some sort of analysis. Sure, there are people who have real, genuine concerns about people coming into their areas, overrunning them and overwhelming them, their services like doctors, schools, and whatever. But Jude, there are also, and I have seen it quite recently, there are those in the background stirring, and it's not about facilities or racism. They've got conspiracy theories about globalization, about one European race and all this sort of stuff. Jude, you should read some of the crap. And they're stirring, Jude, by the way, some of it is really serious. These people are in the background saying, this is all a conspiracy. It's a one world theory run by George Soros. And Jesus, but
You'll have to
God,
watch
give us a
what
break.
company you keep online, Pat. They sound like nutters to me.
Jesus. I had an uncle. It's a family trip. My wife says it's definitely. He emigrated to Scotland in the 1930s. And he's a big Celtic supporter. Guess what he done? He used to go to the Rangers end when they were playing Celtic to hear what they were saying.
Yeah, death wish. Death. You know what I was thinking? I think in ways the government has fallen down in this, because they
What do you mean?
When they're accused by communities of having landed them with these people without any consultation, the government doesn't come back and say, "Oh yes, we consulted with you." They sort of try to brush that aside. Now that's wrong. The government definitely should, in coordination with the local people.
But hold on, can I stop you there? Right, can you imagine tomorrow morning? I'm in the government, and I send Jude Cons down to negotiate with somebody in Greencastle or here in Burt.
Yeah.
The first thing you're going to say, we're forewarned now. We'll have a whole lot of people out in the street, and you're not getting in.
Well, this whole thing about being consulted is just a front. It wouldn't matter if they consulted until doomsday; they'd still not want them.
Yeah, exactly. Because, well, Jude, come on, even strategic wise, if I consult with you, by the way, Jude, I'm moving 3 people into your house without consulting you.
Oh, no, they're not, Pat, hold on. They're not. The government isn't saying they're doing that with down in Clare or anywhere else.
No, but what I'm saying is, Jude, if I consult with you in regard to something that's going to happen, what is the first thing you're going to do? You're going to go around all your neighbours and say, look, they're going to get 20 asylum seekers in here. We don't want them in our estate.
Well, is there no human sympathy? I mean, these people presumably have come a long way from home. You don't do that for the good of your health. You do it because you're forced to do it.
I'm going like my mother here, but because one case doesn't. I remember the wee girl. I was invited over to a school to sort of give a thing about journalism. And I got sitting talking to this, and I remember she was a beautiful looking, she was about 15-year-old Ukrainian girl. And I said to her, "What do you want to do?" And I could see, you could see the genuine sadness on her face. She says, "I want to go home." Dude, it got to me because I sort of thought, why are we, treating these people? She didn't want to be there. And I'm sure her parents didn't want to be. She wanted to go back to her own people, speak her own language, see her own friends. And look how many people have died, how many buildings have been ruined. Their cost of reconstruction, it'll take years and it'll cost billions. So, Jude, a wee bit of, to use your term, a wee bit of human sympathy, a wee bit of humanity, and stop smearing people for no reason.
Yeah. I was wondering also, could the government, for example, if you've got, say, 300 males or females for that matter, would it not be possible to get those people to work, set up some sort of scheme whereby they'd be doing something that actually would improve things? It might be giving them a small grant to set up a business of some kind. A lot of these guys, I suspect, certainly if they're anything like the few immigrants I've met here, they're bloody good workers.
I think the Ukrainians, they're under that scheme, refugee scheme. They're a bit like the EU type. They're allowed to work and so on, and I think that a lot of them are trying now to find jobs. Jude, a lot of them, the Ukrainians and the Poles and people, the Polish guys, a lot of them are have apprenticeships. They're great electricians.
Oh yeah,
they're great at working in motor cars. They're great engineers.
Yeah.
Like all our guys are lawyers, doctors, and all the rest. A lot of the Eastern Europeans have done apprenticeships, and they're great plumbers. They're great carpenters. All the trades.
Yeah, the government hasn't made the southern government, that is, hasn't made any. I haven't heard anybody talking about the possibility of turning what is apparently to them a burden into some sort of asset. I mean, if you've got all these young guys with lots of energy, then I'm sure there's all sorts of things they could be doing, and they even could be paid. And in no time at all, you could find that they were actually paying their way in terms of their taxes and so on. I mean, there's nothing more dispiriting than to be sitting around all day filled with energy and nothing to do. Idle fingers, the devil lingers, as my mother used to say.
Yes.
Okay, anyway. Well, let's move on a wee bit. Local elections, Pat. I was talking about ballot counting there this morning.
Yeah.
There's 105 seats Sinn Féin have, the DUP have 122, Alliance has 53, and the predictions are, and I wonder if you agree with these predictions, Sinn Féin will have a majority over the DUP in terms of seats. Alliance will leapfrog the Ulster Unionist Party and the SDLP to become the third largest party in terms of membership. In terms of councillors. Does that seem a reasonable assessment?
Well, based on I was reading Freya Clemens in the Irish Times this morning, and I think somewhere along the line, Jude, if projections of recent elections are followed on this one, that's the way it should go. But having said that, Jude, you see, there are so many imponderables. Has the DUP, taken the sort of as their hardline worked in unionism? All these calls for unionist unity.
Yeah.
If I'm living in Portadown or Ballymena, they actually wait a minute, I'll forget about the TUV this time and anybody else and the UUP. The DUP are standing up for us about the protocol and they deserve our support. Or and I don't see. I'm not on the mindset of what's the unions. Or do the alternative? They balls this up. What do you call it? Look at the mess of the budget. Look at our health service.
Well, what's
look
your
at the
instinct,
cutbacks
Pat?
and everything.
What's
So,
your
Jude, I just don't know. Say again.
Do you not have a feeling? I have a feeling. Now, I could be wrong, but I have a feeling that a lot of unionists, a lot of DUP people are not terribly satisfied with the way the DUP have handled this. Either they think they're going too soft or they think they're going too hard, in which case votes could leak towards the TUP,
leaks both ways,
or on the other side they could leak towards the UUP or even Alliance for that matter. I don't know. I could be wrong. I mean, I usually am, but I suspect that the DUP might not have a very happy experience over the next couple of days. I'm not sure about Alliance. I have a feeling Alliance may have been inflated, but the commentators seem to be pretty definite that the Shinners are going to emerge as the largest party. Now, I mean, the largest number of councillors. I think actually, and I know we shouldn't say this, but I think that's terribly important. As somebody who have Republican sympathies, for them to have taken the First Minister's slot and be the biggest party in the North, and then to follow that up a year later by being the biggest party locally, that's pretty, discouraging. If you were somebody who believed in the union, it would show that the South, North, Sinn Féin is striding there like a colossus.
Yeah. So, Professor John Tong was quoted last night. He said this could be a career-ending prediction, but it was very brave. But he was basically saying what you're after saying, that Sinn Féin would be the largest party. DUP, basically, Sinn Féin would gain seats. DUP would lose seats. Alliance would leapfrog the SDLP and the DUP or UUP and so on. You're right. Sinn Féin were on 105. The DUP were on 122. So, right, if it switched around, that suddenly maybe the Sinn Féin. Now, Sinn Féin didn't have a good outing in 2019.
No.
Jude, I was involved in a wee bit in the Derry campaign with a certain person in the SDLP.
Yeah.
And I was sitting watching. The SDLP in Derry, or not the SDLP, Sinn Féin in Derry did not do well. There was a sort of, there was a lot of complaints about arrogance and nepotism and all the rest of it. Now, if they've got their house in order, it'll be interesting to see how they do this time.
Yeah, I suspect they will have made it their business to put their house in order, because it was, a real shocker. And you quoted the figures for Colm Eastwood in terms of the Westminster election, that when he just annihilated his opposition. The interesting thing is this: people say, "Well, look, this is only about picking up bins, planning, all local small-term stuff."
Yeah.
So the constitutional question doesn't enter into it. I think it does. I think it most definitely does. It's got to do with momentum. It's like Manchester City the other night. They seem to have a momentum.
It's Real Madrid.
It's very hard to see anything stopping them, because they have this self-belief, among other things. And I think the same thing with regard to Sinn Féin, that if they have conquered the South, conquered the North in terms of Stormont, and now are about to conquer the local election, mean, that really does produce a groundswell. Everybody likes a winner. People don't like
Yeah,
people who are
Jude,
losing.
I think the point you're making is actually a good one. If after the sort of the assembly elections and they where they suddenly leapfrogged, that was seismic, Jude. Nobody can deny that. It's
Yeah.
been played down, but it's seismic that Sinn Féin is now in the pole position to be first minister,
Mm-hmm.
right? If they follow that up by local government, that they've leapfrogged the DUP and also the biggest party in local government, Jude, it's hard to ignore then the mandate of that party and everybody sort of playing silly buggers with the DUP. The DUP can't. Jude, we've said this a million times. The DUP went for the hardest Brexit possible, ballsed up a couple of British prime ministers. They then suddenly the protocol, they were demanding this, demanding that, demanding the other. Now they got the Windsor Framework document, which was passed what 520
Yeah.
19 or
Yeah.
29, I
Yeah.
can't remember, but a huge majority, and they're still sort of saying we have the power to switch the British government, the UK government, the EU, and all the rest of it to get our way. And you're sort
Mm-hmm.
of going, what part of insanity is this? Do you not get?
But
Jude,
there was some
something's got to give.
politicians.
Either the British government sort of stands up and says, "Look, wait a minute, this is over. Either you accept this, or you start preparing for a border poll on the United Ireland."
Somebody said that, I'm not sure who it was, but they used the image of the DUP having its hands around the throat of the British government and the EU. I thought that was singularly inaccurate. I would have thought it was the other way
Yeah,
around, that the EU
uh,
and the UK have their fingers around the throat of the DUP.
just to digress a wee minute. Did you hear I saw, I came across on social media. Mary, she was from somewhere like Sheffield or Nottingham, I think it was. She was on the Nolan show the other morning, and she
Oh, I read
basically
about it
said,
somewhere.
"We are
Yeah,
sick and tired of you." What?
I
Did
think
you
I
hear
read
it?
about it somewhere. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, she basically said, "We are sick and tired of you people. You keep waving your flags. We detest you. Why didn't you go and all that?" Now, I don't think you would have got that 10, 15 years ago.
Well, there always was a belief among a lot of people. And I remember, well, I could go back as far as 25, 30 years even, where people were saying, instead of having a poll, a border poll or anything like it here, why not have one in England and Scotland and Wales, asking
Oh,
them, do
yeah.
they want the North to stay part of the UK? And people confidently saying, not a chance. They wouldn't want them at all.
Yeah.
So I think that's been
Yeah.
in the air for a long while, but I don't think it'll ever come to that, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I think we'll have to.
But Jude, one thing that struck me, Nolan tried to say, "How dare you?" Sort of say, "We're as much British as you are." Mary was having none of it.
It really is.
You're not as
It
British as French, like.
resembles a jilted lover. It really does.
Yeah.
The scornful mistress, who says,
Ju-
"Get out
ju- you
of
know,
this
the
house."
thing about it, like everybody, yeah, everybody can have sympathy for the unions, but they've dug this hole themselves.
Yeah.
Nobody else did it.
Well, it's sort of tragic in a way. I think it was who was it said that the unionists sometimes appear to be a lonely people. Um,
Yeah.
Dairy commentator said that at one stage. There is a loneliness
Mm.
because you see, on the one hand, they come from originally hundreds of years ago. They're now thoroughly Irish, incidentally, 100% Irish. But they came from Scotland, they came from England, and they've never quite lost that sense we are intruders and we've got to look after ourselves because these bloody Irish might kill us if we don't. Um,
Yeah.
which is a
Yeah.
terrible shame, because you see instances in the South where people who would have been Protestant and Unionist in their sympathies, when the state was established, they slowly but surely and then thoroughly embraced the fact that they were citizens in
Yeah.
this new state. In fact, I was talking to a guy the other
Yeah.
day, and he was telling me that from his own family, he knows that is the case, that there were in-laws that were older, and at one stage, they would have been slow to accept the idea of being part of an Irish state, but they gradually saw something to be proud of rather than something to fear. So
Yeah. Yeah.
anyway, that's what's happening to poor old the DUP. I think we're both right, Pat. I think the DUP aren't going to do very well. I think Sinn Féin's going to do well and surpass them. Alliance, I'm not sure. I'm just not sure. I do know some areas that got an awful lot of posters. They got an awful lot of posters,
Yeah.
and they sent letters to people, little apparently handwritten letters asking for the vote.
Yeah.
I mean, whoever's running their campaign is doing a very good job. There's no doubt about that.
Just about 3 miles from where I'm sitting now,
Yeah.
there's a place called Coshquin.
Oh,
And
yeah.
for the first time ever, I have seen Alliance Party posters. It's usually Sinn Féin or the SDLP. It's a heavily sort of a national, it's on the fringes of Derry City,
Yeah.
and but the first time ever I've seen Alliance posters there.
Yeah. I mean, all the signs are they're going to do well. I just have a sneaking feeling, though, that people might retreat to their heartlands, as it were. Anyway, let's go on and talk briefly about this video that's been seen a million times of an attack on one young fella. Where did that happen, Pat? Where did it occur?
Actually, Jude, it's been shared 5 million times.
5 million times. Oh,
it happened in Navan. He was a 14-year-old boy going home. Jude, I am not sure of the background. I think, if I'm reading the entrails are right, he might have been gay, and that seems to be. And he was going home from school. He's 14. He was walking home, and he was attacked. But it's a vicious attack, Jude. A seriously vicious attack in the sense that he's. I think he's got broken teeth. There's a footprint apparently on his forehead, a boot print. He was kicked and punched as he lay on the ground, and it was filmed and videoed. Now I'm not sure, Jude. I'm not making any. I presume he was different in some way. That's what I'm getting at. And there was sort of Lord of the Flies type thing, type attack. Now, I heard Leo Varadkar on the last day, and he said I would send him a message. In fact, he said he's going to contact the family, and he says to tell him life does get better. And that's the reason I think there might be he was on with Claire Byrne the other morning, and she says to him, that seemed like a very personal thing. He says, yeah, well, he says, I was the brown guy with the funny name, whom some people might have suspected was gay. So he says, I know I have a wee bit of an insight what it was like for this young fella. So, Jude, it was a disgraceful thing to have happened. Whether you're black, brown, what your sexual orientation, what your religion is, this was vicious.
Well, Pat, isn't it strange that you would have the Taoiseach, an Indian and gay, and clearly he's got the support of his party or the populace generally, or he wouldn't be there. And yet you have these cases of these young guys who are attacking this young fella apparently because he's gay. There's a contradiction there.
They're pretty sick individuals. No, but you know what's really gets to me? The fact that somebody videoed that and they thought it was great fun and put it up, and it's been shared apparently 5 million times.
But that's an old.
The Gardaí are investigating.
Go ahead.
What's that, Jude?
No, go ahead. No,
the Gardaí are investigating it, and it's. Jude, apparently the Gardaí want to put it down. Now, as far as I know, we don't have hate crime legislation in the Republic, and I'm not certain of that, but the Gardaí are describing it as a hate crime.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But Jude, genuinely, I'm not a particularly vindictive person, but I sincerely hope whoever is involved in this is actually brought before some sort of tribunal, be it a court or be it something. People should not be allowed to get away with things like this.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, there's two crimes or two bad things that have happened. One is the attack on the kid, and the second one is the number of people, you say 5 million, who have wanted to see this happening. Now, I think the second one maybe should be modulated a wee bit, because people naturally rubberneck, as they say. If there's a car accident and you're going past, it's impossible not to stare at it and see, is there a bad crash or is there bodies or what's going on? And in modern terms, if somebody says there's a video where 6 guys are taking the life out of a young fella.
Jude, I mean, I'm having to go with the person who filmed it and thought it worthwhile to put it up on Twitter.
But he knew there was an audience. Those are the people. See, Pat, he knew there was an audience.
Yeah.
And I mean, let's face it, when anything's happening now, an awful lot of people see it through the screen on their phone. Prince Charles, King Charles comes, the phones are out. People go to see Game of Thrones, The Twisted Trees or whatever, their phones are out.
Yeah.
it's very often people settle for not actually experiencing the thing and use instead a filming or a video of it. I think that's a very
Yeah.
common thing, and I don't find it at all surprising. You know, we on occasion we say that's great. For example, in the police in the States, Black Lives Matter. The difference is there now are
Yeah.
phones that catch them doing it, and we say, isn't that
Yeah.
great to see
Yeah.
that? And in the
Yeah.
Ukraine, when you see some building being smashed or somebody in grief, it really brings it home to you with a force that it otherwise
Yeah.
wouldn't have. So I
Yeah.
don't know if I would say that that person who taped it was doing it out of some sort of glee. I think they were doing it out of, more likely to be doing it out of just a natural tendency to want to capture it on their phone and show to people.
But you, what's sort of human being? See, I presume there's blood everywhere. He's a broken teeth. He has, I think, a broken nose.
Uh,
He has severe facial lacerations, and so on. Does somebody think and it was apparently a pretty horrific attack, Jude,
yeah.
that the humanity of it or inhumanity of it
Uh,
was shocking. And does
yeah.
somebody think that's entertainment? And it's where, like, look at the humiliation now for the wee 14-year-old boy that's up there and everybody's seen it and so on. How does he go to school? Well, I don't suppose he'll be going to school on Monday if he's still in hospital. But when he goes back to school, everybody pointing, oh, there's the guy that, I think there's something horrific and horrible and vile about what's happened here.
But yeah, but if you translate that into movies, I mean, horror movies, there's such an appetite for them, you know, violence, guys being blown up, strange creatures coming at people and gouging out their eyes and so on. There is an appetite within human beings for this kind of horror, and sometimes they move from the world of fiction into the world of fact and see it as even more. It's kind of horrible. It's playing to the worst part in our nature. But that part is in our nature. I think we have to accept it. Okay, Pat, we're running short of time. So maybe we could talk a little bit about the man who knows everything about Brexit and why it isn't a huge bonanza financially for the UK. And that man is Nigel Farage. He has spoken and explained the whole thing. Do you want to tell us what he said?
I thought he was on Sky and he admits that Brexit's a failure. Jesus, but of course, as usual, you know the old one, distraction. But by the way, the reason it's a failure is the Tory government hasn't implemented what I suggested. In fact, they're worse than the guys, the commissioners out in Brussels. We had opportunities and they missed them. Bollocks, dude. But the fact that Farage, the architect of Brexit, is on the record as saying Brexit has failed, to me, is enough, because he can now try and, wish list it away whatever way he wants. But the reality is he's admitted Brexit has failed. What's your view?
Well, the announcement the other day would seem to suggest it very definitely has, at least in the world of electric vehicles. The fact that a number of car companies have contacted the British government and said, look, if we stick to the terms you agreed with the EU, we're scuppered as an industry. We'll have to pack it in, and they'll probably go off somewhere else and do it in Europe, I imagine. So, I mean, that kind of hammer blow makes it just glaringly obvious what a lack of success there is in terms of... In fact, can you point to one major area where there's been improvement since Brexit in the UK?
You know what Jacob Rees-Mogg was on the other day, claiming that the success of the British government of helping Ukraine was down to the fact that they were no longer in the EU. Jesus, talk about subliminal lunacy. But anyway, then we moved on. There was somebody else on, I think it might have been Rishi Sunak, said one of the good things about Brexit is our farmers can be more proactive and have greater freedom. Jude, the farming industry in Britain is in serious diffs. They can't get enough workers. They can't pick crops and so on. Jude, there was a guy on, I can't remember now. I think it was your guy on LBC asked a couple of listeners on his program. He's got a name named Sean O'Brien or somebody's name.
Yeah.
And he asked him to name any single benefit from Brexit. He asked 3 or 4 one morning. Not one person could name a benefit. But Jude, look at the way. Their economy is supposed to shrink by 4%. As I told you the last day, when we were going to Spain. The wee girl at the I know the immigration desk said,
Yeah.
if you've got an Irish passport, go there. If you don't, go to the other side. And they were forced to wait, and we were allowed through. Even simple things like that, Jude. And Jude, the everything just that they can't even take part. My son was away there recently in Norway about an Erasmus scheme. He's a school teacher.
Yeah.
Britain's outside that. We can't participate in that. So in other words, all the rights of 20 British kids to go to 27 other countries is gone.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, it's the opposite of what everybody thought. We were moving towards a kind of a globalized society whereby you became a citizen of the world and were open to and interacting with and trading with, free trade with all these other countries. The very opposite has happened. I don't know what the answer to it is. Would a party? I know Labour is hopeless on it. Labour is afraid to say for one moment Brexit has been a shambles. They'll say the Tories made it a shambles, more or less like Nigel Farage. But none of them have the guts to come out and say the whole thing was wrong, because they feel that they get it in the neck from people who would say you're anti-democratic. I actually think that when circumstances change, you should change your mind. And that's the problem. Circumstances have changed and they won't change their mind, or they're afraid to.
I think, Jude, Keir Starmer has got a 20-point lead in the polls. He won't even say tomorrow's Saturday in case it loses him a few votes. It's right now Labour stands for nothing. And I mean nothing. I don't even understand why anybody would vote for them. I think, as you said the last day, would it not be better having the substance rather than the shadow? Go for the Tories, and you know what you've got.
That's right. At least it's honest. That's what some people feel about the TUV and the DUP, incidentally. Okay, that's us, Pat. Our time is over. See how time flies when you're having fun? Did you enjoy that?
When you're having fun.
How was it for you?
That was in the earth.
Okay, Pat.
Right, Chid.
Yeah.
Enjoy your weekend.
Thank you very much. See you. Enjoy the weekend.